This is Leicester Till I Die TV. Watch and subscribe on YouTube and listen on your podcast platform.
Hi everybody, Jerry Taggart here. Now be sure to watch Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV by subscribing on YouTube and following them on social media for all the latest Leicester City news and information. Come on you foxes!
Strap yourself in,
because we're set up, switched on and ready to go.
Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it's live.
Good evening, fellow Fuchs fans. How are we doing? I hope you're doing better than we are at this end. And apologies for being a little bit late. We've got a couple of the older internet gremlins getting in. I need my son to come in and turn me on and turn me off again. That didn't sound right, did it? How are you doing? Hey, extra time. 3-3 Croatia, Spain. Come on, Croatia. Let's get these big guns out. Netherlands, goodbye. It's like the parting of the Red Sea, just for England to walk on through and pick up the trophy on the 11th of July. Yeah, right. That in mind, what do you think of Southgate? Should he stay? Should he go? Join us at 10:15. We've got a special on the eve of us playing the Germans again. We're going to have a bit of a chat about Gareth and what he's doing for the England team. But this isn't about Gareth. This is about Leicester City, and it's one of these.
Give me 5 from Leicester Till I Die TV.
join in as we look at the good, the bad, and even the ugly.
Leicester City with Chris and Chums.
It is, and we are live on YouTube, Leicester Till I Die TV. Remember, if you see a button, give it a press, a sub, a like, a notify. Just get me going and press my buttons, please. Leicester Till I Die, the group on Facebook, and at Leicester TID on the old Twitter sphere. Let's just say hello to a few people before we start. Miss Melina, good evening. I know you're working, or it's good afternoon over there in North America. But thanks for joining us. Working, watching the game and doing this. You see, women can multitask, can't they? Daniel, good evening. Thank you very much, sir. I hope you've worked your formation out now. 4-4-2, not a diamond, remember. David, good evening. How the devil are you, sir? Thanks for joining us. Right, well, let me bring my colleagues in because it's been a bit of a interesting start. So we'll bring Brad in and say good evening, Brad.
Evening, Chris. Yeah, I'm the emergency substitute that's been called up.
You are the David Fairclough or the Jim Melrose. You are the Jim Melrose of the team. I tell you what, we might as well just move in together, you and me. I think we're like spending the whole week together.
Yeah, we got about 4 days of me constantly appearing on here. People are going to get sick of my face and the voice.
Yeah, hey, brothers from a different mother, mate. Brothers from a different mother. Fingers crossed. Spain have finally gone ahead. Bloody hell. Dean, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
4-3.
And we're going to bring Matt in. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that it's working.
Hey.
Matt.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. You give me heart attacks, mate. Put an extra penny in the meter.
I know, I'll have to stop paying the broadband bill, won't I?
Yeah, I don't know whether you live in the middle of nowhere or what have you got. You should have voted Labour. You'd have got free broadband then.
Get yourself a more athletic hamster to power the wheel, mate. That'll help as well.
But the kids aren't working hard enough on the treadmill.
This is it. This honestly, kids these days, what's the point of them? Right. So basically, guys, we're going to be looking at the best 20 signings. Now, Matt has obviously thought this through because he's had time. Brad, we dropped him in it because, like I say, he's there just in case your broadband goes again. And of course, there's going to be some signings on there. I'm sure that people, why didn't you put him on? Why didn't you put him? If you put every single signing, we'd still be doing this at the end of the Euros. So we've gone for 20 that I think are reasonably good. And we're going to do it a bit like we did the show the other week, but like the X Factor chair. So we're going to have 5 and we'll put them in 1 to 5. And then as we go through others, you can either add them in or not add them in and put them in. And you can put them in at any position and drop anybody else out. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, I watched the one you did with Craig. I've got an idea how you mean. If we're going to put someone in, who we knocking out?
Yes.
Kind of build it that way. Yeah, I've got an idea how it is.
Yeah. Can I just say hello to Rich Sports? How the devil are you, sir? And Melina, obviously an Arsenal fan, Rich Sports, Man United fan. They've come in here to see, if there's any pickings on our signings that they could probably pick up in a season or two.
There's a few players that we might pick on here that, even though they're in the 40s and 50s, would still do a better job than some of their 11. So they best keep an eye out.
Yeah, exactly. Even 1 or 2 that are retired, Matt.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are some, without giving too much away, there's some really good, fantastic signings in this list. Some of which, it'd be good if we could re-sign them again in June, like 20 years ago when they're in their prime. I
know. Could you imagine? I was looking at some of those and I was thinking, like, oh my God, did we really have him? But right, let us bring the chart in. Who shall we start with? I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because we've got some older ones there, which I remember, but Brad probably doesn't, because Brad being a little spring chicken. Not saying that you're old, of course, Matt, but I'm going to start, believe it or not, and I'm going to, only because I can drop this in, my ex-neighbour, Lenny Glover. Matt, can you tell us about Lenny Glover?
Well, I think he'll go to the number 1 spot at the minute. There's nobody else there, so he can go there. I think, Lenny Glover seemed to be, again, I didn't watch him play, but he seemed to be a good player and a tricky winger. He was, part of a team in the 70s that was known as an entertaining side.
Yes.
Didn't win a lot. But he was part of that. I think he was a bit of a character as well in the city of Leicester at the clubs as well. With Birch and the others in those days.
Yes, yeah, he had a bit of a post-football interesting time as well, didn't he? If the rumours are to be believed. I don't suppose you remember him, do you, Matt? Brad?
No, I don't. I'm too young to remember him, but due to my eagerness as a kid and fondness of the club, I know bits of him by things that I've seen written about him, some articles and some historic facts that are up and around the stadium. So I know bits of his career at Leicester. I know he was greatly admired by a lot of supporters, and I know he was quite the flash man on the pitch, wasn't he? Glover. Yeah. So I understand why he's definitely made this top 20. I'd have to take Matt's word and your word for it if you argue him to get in the top 5 overall. But I'm happy to see him because he's a name I recognise, even though I never saw him play.
I mean, obviously, I would put him in there just because I used to walk his dog, but he was a bit of a nippy winger before we had a nippy winger. And talking of nippy wingers, we'll put Steve Guppy in. Let's bring Steve Guppy in now. To my mind, an amazing buy, one of O'Neill's better ones. Nat.
Yeah, he was a good signing. He was it was strange because he was one of those who was signed for Newcastle by Kevin Keegan, and he left pretty soon after because they abolished the reserve team. So he went back down the leagues, and then it was I think O'Neill had worked with him at Wycombe, and then he re-signed him for Leicester, and he came into the Premier League quite late in his career. Ended up becoming a regular for us in that wing-back role. And then he made, I think it was one appearance he made for England. So he was, he was a really good player. He was cheap as well. I can't remember the exact amount, sort of like $500,000 or something like that, or £1 million was the amount.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the signings, I put him number one at the minute because I know more about him than Glover. Maybe he was a good player, but this isn't about the best players. This is about the best signings. So
Yes.
I think for some of the others, we'll be looking at the impact that they made on the club. And while he was a good player, I can't remember any. He scored the odd goal. I think there was one against Chelsea with his right foot. He bent it in, but I can't think of many games that he sort of single-handedly won or dragged us through like some of the other players on that list.
Oh, you make me feel so old now. you do. I mean, to me, here we go. This Dean's backing me. Dean's another old fogey like me here. Guppy second behind only Beckham for assists at one time. Always delivered a cross, and that's all you want as a forward. Yeah, I mean, Dean would probably agree with me here. He could literally, he should have, had he not been playing for Leicester, it's that old saying, I think he would have played for England a hell of a lot more. It was abominable that he wasn't picked for England. He could pick a cross out, and yet he got the odd goal for us, but he could pick a cross out like you wouldn't believe. He was just... and obviously he followed Martin O'Neill to Celtic, but he made 140 plus appearances for us. Again, Brad, I'm sure you're going on sort of YouTube in memories alone.
No, Steve. My age actually has Steve Guppy was fond memories. I was born just before O'Neill came in. I was around the whole Ryan Little. And that era. So
yeah,
my first honest memories of Leicester were when they gained promotion in '96, and I will more argue on the fact that Steve Guppy was. If you asked a player from today's squad to be compared to a squad back then, we have one of the most cursed positions, in my opinion, on the left side of midfield. Harvey Barnes, had he not gotten injured, should have been going to the Euros. Had he not been injured and been able to pick. Mark Albrighton, criminally underrated, should have got more caps for England entirely. And they both get compared to Steve Guppy. He was phenomenal on that wing. There are so many memories I have of Steve Guppy. I remember the game that I think Matt was on about against Chelsea. And I think in that game, it was ironic because we scored an own goal and they scored an own goal. And Steve Guppy got the ball and I was screaming at the TV for Leicester to shoot. And he bent it round Ed De Hoy, who at the time was probably one of, if not the best goalkeeper, arguably in the Premiership. And he did that for fun against Chelsea. And I have such fond memories of Steve Guppy. And I agree. His stats, if he'd have been anywhere else, would have got him picked for England 100 times more than what he was picked. He was criminally undervalued, not particularly by Leicester, but by England himself. And I would easily put him ahead purely on memory, if nothing else, but I would put him number one on that list over. Yeah. I think he's a good contender for top 5 because he was phenomenal.
He was £850,000 we paid for him. And he got his one and only England cap, and Kevin Keegan described him as a little bit like a left-sided David Beckham. I mean, Matt, there's no better compliment than that, is there?
No, there's not. I mean, he was a good player, but I think that team that he came into, they were all good players. And he definitely played his part to the success. I think was it 97 he joined?
Yes, February 97. I think as we look at this, though, like you said earlier, as a signing is how we're comparing him. And I just think, what would he be worth in this day and age. He's he's well, I don't think you get much change personally out of 15 odd million, but
I think you get 30 million for him with what he was able to do. Honestly,
probably yes.
I think you'd at least get 30 million, but I understand where you're both coming from with making it a transfer and what he, how great of a signing it was. It was something that he became a great player over time, more than that.
I mean, he was 850,000 what he did. This guy, Matt, cost 8,550th of that cost. I probably got that totally wrong. It was a free. Mark Albrighton got to be one of the best ever signings by any club in the Premier League, surely.
Yeah, I'd put Mark Albrighton number one on that list at the minute. Like you say, he didn't cost us anything. At the time, he left Villa, who I think they were in a relegation battle, weren't they?
Yes.
And came to us. He was just fantastic. He played his part in that great escape team. He played his part in the championship winning team. And then what's quite interesting with Albrighton is he seems to have, when a new manager comes in, he seems to be the one who misses out for a bit, but he always forces his way back into the team. And earlier this season, he was going through a spell where he was just absolutely fantastic. And if he was 5 years younger, I think he'd have been picked for England. He's brilliant. He can defend, he can go forward. And, you talk about Guppy and his crossing ability. Albrighton, I think, is playing in the wrong era, really, for his crossing ability, because we don't play imagine if we had a Heskey or a Ewan Roberts or a Steve Walsh up front to get on the end of Albrighton's crosses. And can you imagine what his record would be like now? But, he's a fantastic player. He didn't cost a penny either. And, for him to have been involved, and he played a big part in three, major milestones in Leicester's history, he's got to be at the top in terms of the impact that he's made as a signing and value for money.
I'm salivating at the thought of him on one side and Guppy on the other. Can you imagine that? But Brad, I mean, he admits himself when a new manager comes in, it does take time to sort of, they take, a while to sort of understand what he's about and how he plays and what have you. But, he's still playing now, still an impact sub. I say a bit of a freebie. Aston Villa must be kicking themselves.
Yeah, a lot of Villa fans were bemused and annoyed that he was sold in the first place, and probably even more so the fact that it was sold to someone they consider somewhat of a rival in Leicester. And he's just Mr. Reliable, isn't he? There's certain times in your life when you support a club that a player like that gets brought in, kind of to a point reminds me of James Milner. There's never a fan of Liverpool that any time, no matter how old James Milner seems to get, that if he comes on the pitch, they're never thinking, oh God, it's James Milner, he's going to completely kill the game now, he's going to stop us. They think, oh, James Milner, great, he's coming on, he's so good at what he does. And that's exactly what you get from Albrighton. Like I said, in regards to Guppy, criminally underrated, should have got more caps than he's ever got for his national country. And we have been blessed with a guy that came to us for nothing and has been worth every single penny that we pay him every week for what he does. He comes in no matter what and earns his way back in. It's brilliant what he does.
I thought you were going to say then he was worth every penny we paid for him.
Yeah, I really did. And then I remembered that. And then I was like, he's earning every week, Brad, because he's got
I think a deserved number one up there at the moment. Let's go right back. Won a World Cup medal while he was at Leicester City. Mr. Gordon Banks, some would say the best goalkeeper there's ever been. Pelly would probably say on that. Chesterfield, he came from. He played 290 odd games, 293 games for us. Didn't manage to score a goal, Matt, but I think we'll forgive him that, won't we?
Yeah, I'm sure he saved plenty.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you talk about players, and Gordon Banks has got to be up there, like you say, with one of the best goalkeepers of all time, and easily one of the best goalkeepers ever to play for Leicester. I think we've been spoilt for goalkeepers over the years, because you can chuck Shilton and Schmeichel into that equation as well. In terms of impact that he had, he joined Leicester at a strange time, didn't he? Because when he joined, I think we were struggling. Was it in the second division, weren't we?
I think he might have been, yes.
Part of the team that got the club promoted. He was part of that team in '63, the Ice Kings, who almost won the double. I think they were top and favourites with about 3 or 4 games to play, and then ended up finishing 4th in the league and losing to Man United in the cup final. He would have been a big part of all that success. The first trophy for the club in '64 when they won the League Cup. He was a massive part of that. And then he left, obviously, to step aside to, what was Shilton, like 16, 17 years old. He stepped aside to allow the next goalkeeper to come in. And I think you've got to, look at Shilton and think the career that he's had, his development, probably helped by the fact that he had somebody like Gordon Banks to learn off from such a young age. I'd put him in second in that list.
I mean, Brad, it's a bit like saying, right, well, Danny Ward's having a good time. Let's ask Casper to leave, put him on the transfer list and promote Danny Ward. I mean, the fact that we let Banks go, it's still one of those things, but, history proves Shilton obviously was more than an able successor. But, again, I don't understand why we haven't got a statue to this guy.
I don't know. There's probably a few players we could suggest. We're not sure why they haven't got statues, but this is definitely this is 100% one of them. It's very difficult, and I won't spoil anything for it, but with the restrictions that are on a video to come, it was very difficult to do a team that I've put together for us without being able to include this man in it for his heroics for club and country. He was a great keeper and a great mentor. I think if Shilton maybe comes in and doesn't have someone like Gordon Banks there to mentor him, he doesn't pass the torch. I think Shilton maybe doesn't come in until he's in his 20s, maybe, if there was anyone else in front of him. He went above. He was just a brilliant phenomenon, and he'll always be remembered at Leicester for everything he's done. And like you rightly said, he probably deserves to come out of it with a trophy, with a statue, for his time at Leicester, because he was a phenomenal keeper and part of the trend, like Matt said, of an area that Leicester have been blessed with at certain points over the time in the goalkeeping department. There's a lot that you compare him to, isn't it?
He's got I think he's got a statue at Stoke. They sort of kind of claimed him. But I mean, you two again are probably too young to remember the save from Pele in the '70 World Cup.
Seen it enough.
I was going to say you've probably worn it out on YouTube. I mean, Matt, how the hell? I mean, Pele was turning away to celebrate, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it was different in those days as well for goalkeepers because one, they didn't have the gloves, and two, they had very little protection from the referee. I mean, nowadays a cross goes in, anybody challenges, it's a free kick to the goalkeeper. In those days,
yes,
you caught the ball and you'd get barged, and it would be a goal if the ball went in. So it was a much tougher role in those days, and Banks just made it look easy. I mean, the fact that he continued. He played for a long time with a few clubs. When he left Leicester, he went to Stoke, won another League Cup there. Then he went over to America. Fantastic.
Sorry to interrupt, Matt. Just give me a sec, Chris. I've got to nip out because it's just about to start raining and we've got some washing out, and I really want to call. So give me a sec.
The life of a bachelor, eh? Okay,
I know,
mate.
right? I will back in a sec.
See you in a bit. Please, Matt, don't let your internet go while Brad's gone away sorting his washing out. But yeah, there were little proper full heavy leather balls, weren't they?
Yeah, completely different game in those days.
Yes. But We are going to go on now, and I'm just trying to sort of mix this up a little bit here and bring in Huth. What again? I think was he a free signing?
Well, I think there was a fee. I think he came in on loan, didn't he, at the start?
That
and
was
then
it.
he joined in the
Yes.
summer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd put him at number 3. He was
3 million apparently. It was
3 million.
rumored to be. Yes.
That was a bargain, really, for the seasons that the service that he got. I'd put him in at a number 3. When he came in, that was when Leicester were dead and buried, and we were down.
Yes.
18 months later, we'd stayed up and he'd won the Premier League. So, the impact, again, this is about his best signing. So, looking at the impact of him in those 18 months, would we have stayed up? Would we have won the league without him? I would say no. So he's got to be a 3. He'd probably be higher up in the list if he'd stayed longer at the club. But he was coming towards the end of his career. Had 2 or 3 seasons here. But yeah, definitely goes in a 3. Definitely edges out the other 2 because of the impact that he made. Yeah.
Oh, this is what we say. The impact. He was what was needed at the time, Brad. I hope you've sorted your smalls out.
Yeah.
Or you Bridget Jones, whichever way you want to go with that. But
I'm assuming it's Robert Huth we're on about here.
It is, yes. Sorry, mate. Yeah.
I have to agree. He was one of them that I believe was brought in January by Pearson, and it coincided with the start of the revival of Leicester in the Great Escape. The performances instantly traversed as well. Even though Leicester weren't always getting the results in January and February, you could see from the instant he arrived the impact he was having when he was on loan at Leicester. And obviously we all know what happened the following season with him at the steady voice at the back. And I think Morgan will say that if it wasn't for having Huth at the back, he might not have been part of that starlet defence that lifted the title, because you needed that experience alongside Morgan. And I think for value, for money, he's definitely a talking point for our top 5 best signings because of his impact. Signing wise, he was exactly what we needed. If we didn't get a quality player like Huth in, I don't think Leicester passed the Great Escape.
No, he was what was his experience. I mean, he'd won a title, I think, at Chelsea. He brought that calming influence. Even, and we'll move on to him now, Matt. You've got Wes Morgan that we'll come on to, and as good as he was, I think Huth made him a better player. And those two, it was a case of nothing is going to pass.
Yeah, I mean, I'd put Morgan in 4 in that list at the minute, behind Huth, just because of the impact that Huth made in such a short period of time. Morgan, will rightly be a Leicester City legend for what he's done, what he's achieved coming from the Championship. I don't know if he's maybe 4th because he played for Forest. Maybe that's something that's.
It's not often we take a Forest player to our hearts like that.
From Forest. Surely you put him higher because he realised his mistake and came to us after Forest.
Maybe. But I think in terms of sort of the impact, Huth was, I think he was instrumental in that. I know Morgan, was the captain and he was the leader. He scored that, crucial goal against Man United in the title-winning season. He saved a few things as well, but for me, Huth had a bigger impact in those 18 months than Morgan, which is why I'd put slightly more. But that's not to take anything away from, Morgan as a real club legend.
No, and Brad. I think Morgan did improve having Huth next to him.
Yeah, I would begrudgingly say that maybe Morgan doesn't make the top 5. I would put him on that reserve bench now, purely because I think if you're looking at what the signing did as an impact, he was brought in for 2 reasons. He's an absolute unit. So he could scare the wits out of attacking players in that box and rough and tumble. But he was a commander behind the scenes. I think his time at Leicester was extended by two reasons: his ability to command respect in the dressing room, to hold the team together, and to deliver the messages across that was needed in the dressing room and on the training ground. But he was also had his playing career probably extended through the fact that he had players like Koof alongside him. I think I very firmly believe, had it not been anyone of whose quality or experience alongside him, he wouldn't have played so many times as he did in a Leicester shirt. I would say that for me, Morgan goes on the waiting on the sidelines part of that chart. I don't see, as much as a legend as the club he is, for a signing for his impact on the pitch, it wasn't improved until an experienced head came on. He was, in all fairness, until Hoof came in, he was a championship standard defender that maybe could hang about at the bottom end of the Premiership in the club, because that's where Leicester were at that time.
But he may not hang about at the bottom of this list, because looking at some of these names that are coming up, I have a feeling that some of these are going to drop off.
I would like to put Morgan already out of it instead of having to see him get dropped out of it later on. I would put him on that bottom. But you guys did the research more than me. I'm just the emergency sort. So I will let you put in where you feel.
Matt, this guy was, for me, I started to watch Leicester in the mid-70s. I was just turning sort of 16, 17 and started to go on my own and what have you. And I mean, this guy was just magic in white tights, wasn't he? I mean, he, again, when you come to think what he would be worth these days, but, the legend that is Mr. Keith Weller.
Yeah, I mean, I was too young to watch him play live, but I've seen loads of videos on YouTube, read his book, which is available at Blue Army Publishing if people are interested, which is really interesting read about his career at, Chelsea, Tottenham, Millwall, and playing for England. He has a goal that's played on the big screen before the games at the King Power, which is a fantastic goal. And Alan Birchinall, who's been there since the 70s and sort of knows everybody, he talks so highly of Keith Weller. Even though I didn't watch him play, it's impossible not to realise what a great player he was. But at the minute, he doesn't make the top 5 in terms of best signings because, just because of the impact. He was part of that entertaining team, but they didn't win anything. And everybody else on that list has won something for Leicester. Football is about winning things rather than entertaining. So he wouldn't make that list for me. I don't know if that's controversial or.
Well, again, football is about opinions, and at the end of the day, this is your chart. And again, like I say, I'm a sort of a little bit older, but Brad, you've seen that goal against Luton. I mean, people talk about the second Maradona goal against England in the World Cup. To me, this was as good as, if not better. But again, we didn't win anything. That team got described like Brazil, but unlike Brazil, like I say, it was close but no cigar for them.
Yeah, the problem is we're talking about signings. It doesn't have to mean they have to win anything. I think we have to pick these on what they did. Did they change anything dramatically at Leicester? I mean, Weller is a well-renowned name for how the whole of Leicester. And just because he didn't win anything didn't mean he wasn't an impactful signing. Like, we're not on about what did they win at Leicester. We're not picking top 5 players that won the most things at Leicester, because otherwise we'd be picking 5 Premier League winners. That's all we'd be picking. You've got to look at when we signed Weller and the fee, and take into account the fee we paid for him at the time. How much did he really impact Leicester? And in a way, he was probably more of the ones that stood out from an exciting Leicester City side. And just because he didn't win anything doesn't mean I wouldn't put him there. For me personally, on terms of what we paid for him and what he brought to the club, he did far more than Wes Morgan.
Yeah.
I mean, I only go off what I see. I
Yes,
would take an experienced head's opinion over mine on this case any day. But for me personally, yeah, well, I didn't win anything at Leicester, but boy, do you remember him. Boy,
I
do
think
you have fond memories of him.
I think it should be in there just for his white tights. To be honest with you, the fact that he was brave enough to wear those. But no, I mean, Matt, I would have him in. But this is your 5. All I can say to that, Matt, I can only just say
Unbelievable,
this.
Jeff.
I'm not disputing he's a good player, and he was a fantastic player.
Yes,
I'm just looking at signings, looking for the impact. Where were the club when he joined?
Yes.
And where did they go to? And from what I remember, and again, I wasn't around at this time, but we were a decent team when he joined. We were a decent team when he left. Did he take us to another level, like some of those other people on the list?
Yeah.
What impact did he have? We were battling relegation, and he came in and scored the goals that kept us up, or did he? I wasn't around in that time, but I can't see the same impact that, say, Robert Huth, where I think we'd have probably gone down without him. I can't see that same impact from Weller, but again, I wasn't around then. No,
this is it, though, isn't it? It's we've got 20 players here who, if we did a top 20, you'd have them all in. But it is choosing that top 5, and this is why, to be honest with you, Matt, I get you in to do it, not me. I'm not stupid, I may look it, but I'm not stupid. Hey, the man with the most expensive shins in the world, Matt, Mr. Steve Claridge, £1.2 million from Palace, I believe. Oh no, from Birmingham. Oh, was Birmingham from Palace? Yeah.
I thought it was Cambridge. Was that who he played against us?
He played against Cambridge, and then he went to Birmingham.
Yeah.
So
no, it was Birmingham actually.
Yeah. Matt said that.
Yeah.
I got it.
Oh, sorry, Matt. I didn't hear you. Sorry. Yeah.
No, it was Matt. I remember him playing against us for Cambridge.
Yes.
That's what I remember.
Yeah. Like we say, Matt, expensive shins.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of signings, Claridge he's got to be up there for the impact that he had. He came in, he was one of O'Neill's first signings. Results were going against O'Neill. Leicester didn't look like they were going to make the playoffs. I think he scored the goal that sort of kick-started that run of form that led to the playoffs in '96. He obviously scored the winning goal in the '96 playoff final. Then he went and scored the winning goal in the League Cup final the next year. I mean, had he not scored that goal and we'd lost to Palace, or he hadn't scored the goal to kickstart the revival, then O'Neill would probably have gone. Probably wouldn't have enjoyed all of those Premier League games. In the years that we had with them, Leicester City could have been a very, very different club. It would have changed the course of everything else. I mean, I would put Claridge up in number 2 spot out of that list, purely for he came in pretty cheap as well, 1.2 million, and he just without him and his goals, we wouldn't have gone up that season. Probably wouldn't have kept O'Neill, and Leicester's future would have been completely different.
Almost one of those what if stories, Matt, isn't it? Yeah. Brad, like you say, I mean, I'm just looking now. I mean, my God, that man's got more clubs than Sevi Ballesteros, to quote an old joke.
Him and Trevor Benjamin must have the same agent, I think, for the amount of clubs them have gone through. Bit alarmed that Matt's saying he came in cheap. That was not cheap. We paid a lot of money for him considering the time there, and then he came from Birmingham. That was not a cheap fee, but it was worth every penny of it. Clinical moments. Yeah, he had a lot of them. He didn't score easy tappings, did he? He liked to shin them in. He liked to score from the outside of the box, but he definitely wasn't cheap. He might seem cheap because of what you pay for players now, but he was not cheap. A lot of people were alarmed the amount we paid for him, considering he was the traveller man of the world at that time. I mean, he had stints all over the place. But yeah, very impactful. For the signing, though, actually, I would argue and reminisce. 2's generous. Yes, he scored the winner against Palace, and yes, he scored the goal against Middlesbrough, but he was in a side that had players that could unlock defences, that could score these goals and may have scored these goals at different times. Would we have beat Palace without that goal? I'd have felt confident we'd have won on penalties. Would we have beat Middlesbrough without Claridge's shin? Again, I'd have felt confident we'd have found a winner down the line. Let's not forget
we had Claridge coming on in goal against Palace. Of course, we would have won. He was going to go on and win it for us, wasn't he?
I think Claridge has a lot of memorable moments, but in terms of overall rating as a signing, I think he was fair for the price we paid. He had to deliver. Let's not forget, for £1 million for a player in them day and age was a lot to ask for, especially when we were a league. We were a Division 1 side, not a Premier League side. Yeah. And he took 10 games to get going before he scored. And I agree with Matt, when he did score, he started that revolution. But there was a certain Emil Heskey that stole the spotlight from him. And for me, I would not have Claridge that high on that list, because I know for a fact that Heskey would go there over Claridge.
I can see how. Problem is, though, of course, Heskey wasn't a signing. Heskey came through the youth system. So,
there's going to be more.
Sorry to make another North Macedonia moment for you there, Brad. But wasn't a signing. But Matt, I mean, 9 clubs he had before Leicester. 20 clubs he had after Leicester, but I was just counting it up there. And there's so many clubs that he actually played one game for. I mean, just to read them out here. So after Leicester, he had 5 at Brighton and Hove Albion, which was a lot, 4 at Brentford, 4 at Wickham. Then he went to Wickham permanently. None at Millwall, 1 at Gillingham, 1 at Bournemouth, 1 at Worthing, 1 at Weymouth, 1 at Salisbury. He like get him in for a game, man, isn't it? But he was a journeyman. But he did. I agree with you, Matt. Sorry, Brad, but I do agree with Matt. He did change the course of our history. Matt.
Yeah, I mean, there were better players than him, and that's why this is difficult, because I suppose it's subjective, isn't it, as to what's a...
Oh, of course it is. Of course it is, yes. Yeah.
What yours and my list, mate, would be very different. I know that for a fact. You're right, it is subjective.
But Matt, right, Mr. Christian Fuchs. Fuchs. Fans' favourite Fuchs. And was he a free?
I believe he was from Schalke.
Yeah, I think he came from Schalke, didn't he? I can't remember. It was either free or it wasn't. It was like a nominal fee. But I mean, he was. I think everybody who was involved in that title-winning team will be, should rightly be remembered as legends. I thought he was a fantastic defender, and it's quite rare these days to have a fullback who can defend. He was almost like an old-fashioned defender. Loved to tackle. Wasn't afraid of any 50-50 balls, anything like that. Even got stuck in. Two memories of Fuchs, really. One is that pass for Vardy for the Man United goal when he equalled the record. I mean, that was just an incredible pass. And second was that, the volley. Was it the volley that he scored? Was it Fleetwood in the cup? He scored like an incredible...
it was, yes. I think it was, yeah. Well, it was definitely the League Cup, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just the technique that he showed. He always seemed to play with a smile on his face. For me, he doesn't make it into the top 5 ahead of anybody else on that list. But he was an incredible signing. And again, he's one of those that, without him, would we have won the league? Probably not.
No, I know what you mean, though. As much as we love him, he probably doesn't quite make it into the top 5 for me. Brad, it was almost like the Hotel California for Christian Fuchs. He came on a 3-year contract and ended up staying about, how many years was it? I mean, it was 6-7 years.
Yeah, 6 or 7 years.
And he's still playing now, of course.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I think he was one of them that the fans will always love and always remember. But when you're talking, apart from the odd memorable goal like Matt's just described there was also one against Crystal Palace, I think it was, where it's thunderbolted into the top corner. he's not really one of them that you kind of instantly think of as, oh, wow, yeah, Leicester, best signing or one of the best signings he ever made. He was impactful, he was great, and he was brilliant. But yeah, I can't see him being on this top 5 list because although you could possibly to a point argue had any other left back come in of that caliber, we probably still would have done what we've done because it was the matrix of that side to play that way. I think Christian Fuchs was one of them that will be very glad that he chose to join Leicester on that period.
Yes. I've forgotten who I've put there now. Muzzy, is it, Matt?
I mean, he was just a incredible player, and we talk about the scouting system that Leicester have got at the minute, but to find him lurking around in Chelsea's reserves, I mean, he was brilliant. And again, the impact that he made instantly, for him to come from playing reserve team football, he'd never made a senior appearance before he joined Leicester.
No,
he just slotted straight into that team. That first season, he was. I mean, we spoke about Fuchs goals. I mean, the overhead kick he scored. There's a goal against Tottenham, I think it was, in the Don't Go Martin game. Or was that against Leeds? So he might have scored another one goal against Leeds. He was just incredible. I'm disappointed he didn't get in the England squad. I know he ended up playing for Turkey and played in the World Cup semi-final, but he'd have done a job in the England squad. I think, like Brad was saying with Guppy, if he was playing for a bigger club, I think he'd have been called up to the England squad. When we got relegated under Taylor, and he stayed for that year in the Championship, he was just outstanding. He just ran every single game. He was head and shoulders above everybody else. He was, what was he, half the price, I think, of Claridge. He played for us for so many years. He made such an impact. And then when he went,
£800,000 he was.
800,000, and I think he sold for about 3 million when he eventually left to go to Birmingham. I'd put him. He's definitely above Claridge. I'm not sure about Albrighton. In fact, I'll put him above Albrighton. I think he goes to number 1 at the minute on the list because he was there for so long. He achieved so much for the club, and the memories that he gave with some of those performances, and he was part of a team that won trophies as well.
Yes. Brad, I think he almost, as Matt alluded to there, he almost single-handedly got us promoted back. And there was a bit of confusion because he handed a request in, then refused to join Middlesbrough because he didn't want to be seen to be jumping ship because we were struggling. I love the guy just for the goal at Was it Grimsby, the overhead kick?
Yeah, it was. It was Grimsby, the overhead kick. I was actually at the Leeds game that Matt was on about where he scored a screamer. Again, another one that never liked tap-ins. I remember his goals against Villa, Leeds in the Cup, where Nigel Martin came out, headed it. That was lobbed him. We thought the Scottish keeper was off his line. Well, did it with a promise if he did it every day of the week. He was phenomenal, like you said. And this is why I kind of knocked Claridge down a little bit in the ratings, because I think this was one that came in at around about the same time and was so more impact was unbelievable. He was probably one of the start. He was probably, in my knowledge, this was where the relationship between Leicester and Chelsea in terms of deals happening seemed to spring from, because we've had some unfortunate players off them. We won't go into details on a certain Mr. Wise, but we've also had some good exchanges between us and Chelsea over the years. Seems like we've got a bit of a
He doesn't make the top 20 here, believe it or not.
Oh, he must have been 21st on the list in mine, wasn't he, Chris? He must have been 21st on your list. But no, like I said, normally when a lone player comes in, they don't always go at you because they're not really bothered. He could have easily just came up, got a few minutes under his belt, gone back to Chelsea, stayed in the Premiership, maybe sat on the bench, and he was one of them that just hit the ground running and stayed with us, got us back promoted, stayed with us, and then in the end only went because he couldn't give any more to the club. And
yes,
if he gave any more to the club, we couldn't afford him anymore. So yeah, I'm glad with Matt putting him number one, because he is my complete and utter favourite of all time Leicester players. So I would have argued tooth and nail to get him up there at number one for now, at least.
Matt, you've done all right. Brad's finally agreed with you. Right. It's taken about 10 players, but he's agreed with you. Hey, Matt, Elvis, and I don't mean a certain Mr. Hammond, but Elvis has entered the building. Sadly, no longer with us. R.I.P. Frank this year. But Mr. Worthington.
Yeah, I mean, he was another one who, sadly I'm too young to have watched him play, but I've seen the videos, YouTube videos, read the stories about him. I mean, on the pitch, he was a real entertainer, and you don't get too many players like that anymore. He was a true maverick, scored some wonderful goals, not just for Leicester, but for other clubs as well. Played for England. He was another part of that really entertaining side in the 70s. It's hard for me to. It's really hard for me to sort of rank him, because again, I didn't see him play enough. Again, we didn't win anything during that time. I can't remember him coming in and having a huge impact compared to any of the others on there. So I wouldn't put him in the top 5. But again, that's not saying that he's not a top quality player. No,
we are going on signings. I mean, Brad has obviously just had to nip off again. He obviously forgot to bring one of his pairs of underpants in. I mean, he after he left us, he went to Bolton, and then Birmingham, Leeds, Sunderland, Southampton, Brighton, Tranmere, Preston, Stockport, Cape Town, Spurs, Chorley, Stalybridge, Celtic. He was at Weymouth. Whether that was at the doubt it was the same time as Steve Claridge. But he's been around. But like you say, he was an entertainer, wasn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's a shame we don't have more players like that these days to make it a bit more entertaining.
I think, and I think, back in the day, I think, when you were Brad's back, when you're an entertainer, you it's almost like we didn't want entertainers, you couldn't play for England, but again, a man that should have probably had more caps for England. Brad, did you lose a pair of underpants on the line? Did you leave one out that you forgot?
No, I had to stretch out. I had to stretch out my back. It gave me a bit of dip, and I didn't want people seeing me going cycle legs in the air. So I just not.
Yeah. Probably not. For those of us that are old enough to remember, was the old dying ant dance. Yeah. Frank Worthington would, again, you're probably only on videos, but it does annoy me how many of these players we had that should have played more for England. He played 8 times for England, and that is just, for me, it's just, it beggars belief, to be honest with you. And I know when we're going to maybe talk about Southgate later tonight, or we are going to talk about Southgate later tonight, but at least he does seem to pick players from other clubs. But back in the day, Frank should have had more than 8 caps for England.
Yeah, he definitely should have. And again, it's so unfortunate. I'd love to be able to judge this entirety on pure knowledge of seeing them all play. Unfortunately, I was born too late, and I wasn't able to see these players in the flesh to maybe argue a case to have these higher up on the list, or at least making the top 5, because we know Frank was an absolute brilliant asset to the club, and he was by far one of the best players that anybody talks about Leicester, and you ask them to remember a player that's from an era. The first one that comes to mind is the likes of Weller and Worthington. So I mean, he doesn't make my top 5 because I just don't know enough about him, and I think it'd be in a way it'd be disrespectful to kind of chuck him in there, not really knowing how to judge him, because I never really saw him. I can only go off what I saw, and to take a guy out that I know a lot of and saw their impacts, it'd be very difficult for me to say, oh, well, he goes in at number 2 because he's a legend of the game.
Yes.
I have to agree with Matt that he just doesn't get in for that because we're just not that knowledgeable.
We're going to have to just speed it up a little bit now because we're just coming up to the hour mark. But Rakani Sports, good evening to you. I put this up earlier. You mentioned him there. It wouldn't be one of these shows, would it, Matt, without mentioning N'Golo Kante?
No. We spoke earlier about the Leicester defence, people like Morgan and how much Huth helped, but I don't think that, Morgan, Simpson, Huth, Fuchs, that defence, the reason we were so good is because of Kante in front of them, not letting anything come through. I mean, he was just outstanding. He came from nowhere and was just world class instantly. And he's just, it's only now really that he's left that he's getting the credit. I think that he deserves. Absolutely fantastic player. I mean, for what we paid, 5 million, sold him for 30 million after a year. It is such a shame that he left. He'd go up to number 3 in that list for me. He would have been higher had he stayed for longer. But I mean, what a signing he was and what a player he was.
Indeed, Brad. I mean, one of those amazing Steve Walsh signings, and he was brought in almost as a, and we'll come on to him in probably next, as a Cambiasso replacement. But as Matt said, 5 million, and basically we got 2 players, didn't we?
Oh, didn't we just? I'd be inclined to maybe put him just over Albrighton, but in terms of value for the signing and the fact that he did it only in one season and it wasn't something we got to see over duration. I mean, if he'd have still been at Leicester and won a World Cup and a Champions League with Leicester and all that, it'd be hands down number 1. But the fact that for his time and what we paid and what we got for him, he was the big cog. He was the big part of that big cog in the machine that held the glue together. I agree with Matt that if he's not there, we maybe don't do as well defensively, and we certainly don't do as well in attacking sense on the counter because he unlocked so many passes. He was brilliant. He definitely deserves a top 3. Definitely deserves to be up there.
And the man he replaced, Matt, Cambiasso, what a signing! As in, we it was one of those. I mean, your book, What If, and we nearly got Cruyff. This was up there with that sort of signing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he was such a huge name. Coming to us after everything that he'd won at Real Madrid, Inter Milan, Argentina. What a fantastic player! I mean, he was a proper superstar, and I still can't believe that we managed to actually pull that signing off. It's one of those that when you hear the rumours that we've been linked with him, you think, well, there's no way he'll come to Leicester because we'd only just been promoted at the time. But he came and he was, absolutely fantastic. Brilliant player. I suppose the only thing is he was there for a year. He was instrumental in turning it around. But the bit that I think you sort of hold against him, you don't know how true it is, but, the rumours that he didn't get on with all of the players. I know Vardy's put in his book that he didn't get along with him. He wouldn't make my top 5, but he was a quality player, and probably one of the big reasons why we stayed up after the Great Escape season. Yeah,
I mean, Brad, I as you know, lived in Burnley for many years, and I'd saw players. I mean, they had the likes of Ian Wright there. They had Paul Gascoigne go there, and when you look at that. And you're thinking, like, as good as Paul Gascoigne was, he looked ordinary because the players around him just weren't up to that standard. Whether that was the case with Cambiasso, maybe wanting more from players that couldn't give what he was used to. But for one season, it was just amazing to be able to see him, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think you could be right. I think he stood out like a sore thumb in the dressing room, and maybe to a degree, it did upset a few players. Vardy has not been shy in saying that in his book. A few others, you kind of saw it as well. I remember watching back over the season on the DVD, and you could see sometimes he was flailing his arms, he was getting cross, and he was slouching his shoulders. And I think sometimes when a player of that caliber comes to makes the shock decision to make a move to a side like Leicester and what we were at the time, he demands the same level that he gives from everybody else. And in the end, it came good to him. We all remember his goal against West Ham that got us on the way to the Great Escape. We also remember that goal that made it 3-3 against Manchester United. He's one of them that the only issue is we're looking at 5 signings that everybody will remember. Even if they don't remember playing, they remember them for Leicester. And I think he's one of them that you could, in a couple of years' time, forget that he was at Leicester, because there's only flashes of his brilliance, and he was an arseache to get through the door, wasn't he?
Yes,
a lot of people suggested that he was only going to come to Leicester for a lot more than what others were going to offer him. So he doesn't make the top five.
We had him for a year. Ankit, good evening, RCB and Chelsea Fan TV. Check the channel out. Kanté, surely number one. I mean, I always think I'm biased towards Leicester, Ankit, but you make me look like a amateur with your Chelsea bias. I don't blame you at all, mate. I don't blame you at all. But he is in there at number 3, not quite number 1. And I'm sorry, Ankit. On this one, I've got to ask what you've been drinking. Drink water. No, I don't think he goes up. I'm not including him in my top 20.
Matty James was the better midfielder than Danny Drinkwater. That it is clear to past to show that if that Matty James didn't get injured, he would have been more of a factor in Leicester, and he was better than Drinkwater.
And Matt, I think Kanté that made Drinkwater look good, wasn't it?
I think he makes everybody look good.
Well, that's true.
Look good.
But okay, let's bring up a bit more up to date now then, and Mr. Ricardo Pierre.
Yeah, Ricardo seems, he's a really good player. I hope he overcomes I hope he has a good pre-season and gets over the injury, and he manages to recapture the form from sort of the season ago, when he just looked outstanding, absolute world beater, and unfortunately suffered with injuries last year. He was a real good gift from Puel. Whether it was him signing it or whether it was the people behind the scenes, but fantastic player. He wouldn't make the top 5 for me. As signings, I think he's been absolutely brilliant, but I'd like to see him at the club a little bit longer and see what he does before we can start thinking about putting him in the top 5.
Yeah. A green band, I think like you say, he's probably got to be here a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think you've got he's great value for what we paid for him, but he's not in a top 20 discussion for me. No. Well, he's not in a top 20, let alone top 5 discussion for me, because he's had injuries and he's been decent. He's been very good for what we paid for him, but this is one we're going to talk about in years to come more than anything.
Yeah. Matt, let's put these two together. You can probably split them up, but again, probably the Huth and Morgan of the time, Matt Elliott and Steve Walsh. Would you put either of those in the top 5 at all?
I mean, Steve Walsh, for me, would go into number 2 in that list, if not number 1 at the minute. I am torn. I think just the fact that, he came in, a young lad, he was, so loyal to Leicester. He was Mr. Leicester. He scored some incredible goals. He saved some, won us some amazing points from his defensive ability. Those 2 goals against Derby in the playoff final. I mean, he had an injection before that game just to play that game, which ended up causing him health issues later on in his life. I mean, he literally put his body on the line for Leicester City. He was there for so long. Proper club legend. I'll put him at number 1. He was captain. He was a goal scorer. He was a goal stopper. He did everything. He was Mr. Leicester.
Overshadowed Matt Elliott, or would you? I mean, he did his fair share. Got the couple of goals at Wembley that beat Tranmere.
I'd put Elliott above Claridge. I'd put Elliott in 5th. On that list. He was a great signing and an absolute bargain as well. There were rumours that he was going to go to Liverpool, and Robbie Fowler's actually come out and said that if Elliott had signed for them and shored up their defence, he's convinced they'd have won the league in the late 90s. So, Robbie Fowler knows a lot more about football than I do. And he was another one who could, he could defend, he could score goals. He was absolute rock at the back.
Yes. Your quick thoughts on those two, Brad?
Well, yeah, both pivotal for Leicester, both absolute bargains. I mean, we got Elliott from, was it Oxford? We got him from Oxford United. Could have played at a lot higher club level than Leicester back then. That was no disrespect to me club, but there was a lot of bigger clubs that he could have ended up as. Probably the only decent thing to come out of Scotland in a long time, to be fair to him. And yeah, they're the two players that you could look at in this genre and go, well, we wouldn't need to worry about strikers getting injured because we just took them up front because they could score a few as well, couldn't they? Yeah, definitely get them in definitely put them in that top five. Yeah.
Now, Matt, I'm making this really, really hard for you because I think left 4, possibly 5 really difficult choices for you here. Fofana. I mean, again, I think I know where this is going. It's early days, but again, Real Madrid rumoured to be coming in for him.
I mean, Fofana looks, the real deal. When we were on the show doing the talking about the team performances for last season, Fofana was outstanding. He's come in quite a lot of money for a young lad, but he's worth every penny and then more. And he's come in and he's so confident, so self-assured. He looks absolutely brilliant, and it's not surprising to see him linked with the bigger clubs. He wouldn't make the top 5 for me at the moment because, as you say, he's been in for one season. He's been outstanding, but I'd like to see him do more for us before he can get into that top 5.
Yeah, I mean, Brad, his when he went off injured. Was it the Tottenham game and he was in tears? I mean, it just kind of. I don't be nasty here, but I couldn't see. Chilwell would probably be quite happy that he was going off and having a rest. Yeah,
definitely.
Yes, yeah. And good evening to Dan from Turf Moor TV. Turf Moor House TV. Let me get that the right way round. Moorhouse being a brewery, that's why I can't speak, you see. And when he's going beautiful bunch, I think he's talking about me. You know what I mean? Especially as where you were last night, Dan. We won't go into that. We are coming now. Let's have a look at Mr. Ndidi. Matt.
Yeah, indeed, he's a great player. And I think this season, when he's not played, and last season actually, when he's not played, we've shown just how crucial he is to the team. He's almost as crucial as Conte, but I don't think he's quite on Conte's level yet. I think he could get there, but I don't think he's there just yet. He's great at tackling, he's great at intercepting, stopping play, but he doesn't have that. He's not able to start the attacks and have that sort of play those killer balls like Conte does. Fantastic player. Again, not in the top 5 at the moment, but definitely one potential. You look surprised with that, Brad.
Yeah, I think you're being a bit critical. It's a bit harsh to compare him to Kante. There's no one in the world that compares to Kante. I think Wilfred Ndidi, when Kante left, we were never going to replace him. We're never going to replace him. No fan thought, no matter who came in there, they were going to get scrutinised, going to put under a microscope. And now there's people that compare the two. I would at least put him just ahead of Elliot. I agree that he's not going to get ahead of Kante. There's no way he can get ahead of Kante because Kante's always going to be a step ahead of him. But I'm surprised you don't put him in your top 5, Matt. I'm just surprised you don't put him in there. I think, Kante was supposed to be irreplaceable, and we've probably got, if you asked any club, okay, you want to buy a central defensive midfielder, and you can't buy Kante, they would turn around and say, well, we want Ndidi from Leicester. I think a lot of people would take Ndidi in a heartbeat for a central defensive midfielder. I would put him in my top 5. I think he's warranted being picked to it. But I can see why you may have just edged him out. Because we've got Kante down in 4th. I would definitely say he's contending to be in the top 5, but I just found it very maybe uber critical of the comparison towards Ndidi and Kante, because that's like trying to compare. That's like trying to compare Ronaldo to someone to be better than Messi at Barcelona. You're not going to do it.
I think the problem we've got here is the fact that it is a 5. Do you know what I mean? Because any of these, like I say, if we made it a top 20, I think it's 21, but everyone would be in that top 20 for me, because I think they're the 20 best signings we've made, and I think just it is a hard job, and like I said, this is why I give it to Matt and rather than myself.
And now we're just down to 5, mate, because I think I'd probably be still stuck here with 10.
I'm sorry. I've just had Dan, you're in the bath. I don't.
This isn't that sort of channel, Dan. We don't know, Dan. We don't need to know about your bath bubbles.
If you tune this because Babe Station's down. Hi, Dan. Well, welcome along. Right now, then, young Mr. Matt. Interesting last 3. Mr. Schmeichel. Is he going to make it into your top 5?
He is going to make it into the top 5. Where he goes this is where it gets really, really tough. But I mean, he's another one who, he started off at the top, didn't he, at Manchester City? And I remember him breaking into the team then. I think he was going for a clean sheet record when he first came through as a youngster. They ended up at Notts County. Then he ended up at Leeds, and then he came to us. I wasn't really sure when he joined, just how good he would be, but he has, he has won us points. He has single-handedly won us games. He is, a true leader. You can see that the way that he's sort of rallied the players. I know he's the vice captain, but the way he's rallied the players in the disasters that we've had, the way he was with the Christian Eriksen incident.
Yes.
The other week,
and of course the helicopter with Kuhn as well. And just a side chat, because Ankit's just said here Switzerland have gone 1-0 up against France. Can I just say, Dan, that the standard of the conversation as soon as you come into the room has totally gone down, below gutter level here. And I'm sure if Brad wants to come and part your water,
I'll turn it into the same colour as wine. I just won't say how.
You two should get a room. Matt, sorry, I didn't sort of find out where we were putting Casper.
I think the thing with Casper is, would we have stayed up without him in the Great Escape season? Probably not. Some of the saves he made and the points he won. Would we have won the league without him? Probably not. Would we have won the FA Cup without him? Probably not. And he cost $1 million. He's been with us for so long now.
10 years, just under 10 years.
Yeah. I'm going to put him number 2.
Number 2. So, bye-bye, Matt. Not you, Matt, obviously. And we jump Casper up to number 2. Now then, the 2 that we have left. I'm going to go for Riyadh here. Amazing player for me. Plotted his copy back with the way he left. But Matt, where are you going to put him?
So to cut the suspense, he doesn't make the top 5. He was an absolute bargain by, was he $500,000 or something like that?
Yeah, something ridiculous, wasn't it?
When we were in the Championship, sold him for 60 million. He was a truly world-class player. His performances during the title-winning season were, just remarkable. The thing that lets him down for me is the way that he left the club. his comments afterwards, and the fact that after the first season there were games where he didn't look like he wanted to be there. After that incident when he went on strike and he was sitting in airports trying to find a new club, it did leave a bitter taste in my mouth. I'm one of the fans who applauds him when he comes back because of what he achieved with Leicester, and I don't think we'd have won the league without him. But I wouldn't put him in that top 5 ahead of anybody else there.
I can see where you're coming from. I mean, Brad, and as you and me, well, certainly myself, I'm not going to criticise anybody who claims depression, which was what he was doing at times. And he had time off from playing. Maybe had he not missed those games that season, we may have actually qualified for Europe again. Who knows? But certainly in the top 20. But he did kind of blot his copybooks, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and he really annoyed me as a person. I don't like him. I didn't like his arrogance when I worked at the grounds and saw him around it. I can respect someone for a talent. I can respect what he can do on a ball. But the thing is, you go and ask Man City fans. They'll tell you he goes missing. When he's not there, they feel like they're down to 10 men. And there was a lot of times at Leicester where if he couldn't be bothered, he was showing his tired as a fan. Miserable, I don't buy it. I'm all for mental health. My sufferings with it, and I'm a big advocate of it. Don't buy it from him. I'm sorry. I think he's talking absolute tosh. Coming out saying we cost him 2 years of his career. Sorry, you'd be stuck in the French second division. I can't stand him. I don't like him.
Or at St Mirren.
Yeah, or St Mirren. Yeah. You ran away from St Mirren. Yeah, great. No, don't like him. And honestly, his first season in the Championship, he was only just better than Knockout. I mean, you look at Knockout's career and what he did at Leicester and what he's gone on to achieve since in comparison. If he didn't commit himself, we'd have probably only got about 4 million for him if he couldn't be bothered. I don't like him. I don't care for him. I don't want him to ever return to the club. I don't care what he wins either. He's an arrogant, stuck-up person. Not a great signing. Great talent, but not one that I'll be happy to remember in years to come. Really do not like the guy.
Brad, don't sit on the fence. Come out and say what you really.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't like to leave my opinions in there. It's a balance, but
hey, it's football. It's all about opinions. I always wonder, Matt. I mean, he did stay an extra season. He did give us the Champions League season. But do you think he was actually jealous with Kante's move to Chelsea?
I don't know. I'm not sure if it was jealousness as such. I don't know if it was more he wanted the money. Maybe he just wanted the bigger stage. I'm not sure. I think he came to Leicester, and I think in his mind he'd outgrown the club, and he wanted to be with a club who could challenge for the Champions League. I think if we'd done better that season in the league, it might have been slightly different. But I think, to be honest, he was probably always going to leave. He was just here until he could find something else.
Yes.
I don't think Kante's move had anything to do with it. No. But he came in for cheap. Leicester made a lot of profit from him. And he helped to win the league. So he's a good signing, but just not in the top 5.
Right, we got there. First ever £1 million player from a non-league club. We saved him from a life of repping in Ibiza, which, let's be honest with you, some of us mere mortals would probably enjoy. But he came close. We stood by him. I know the chairman put his arm around him a couple of times. Kuhn when he was alive. Mr. Vardy. I'll just sit back and let you enjoy the moment, Matt.
I mean, he has been fantastic. I have to say, I didn't know anything about him when we signed him, and I did think we've really paid £1 million for a non-league player, and I probably wasn't alone thinking that. But I mean, what a player he's been, and what a servant to the club. Everything that he's achieved. I think during the title-winning season, his going for the goal record against Van Nistelrooy, I think that took a lot of pressure off the players, because the media were focused on, is he going to equal the record, or how many goals is he behind now, rather than focusing on the team. So I think that short period of time when he was going for the record, that took a lot of pressure off the team, put the pressure on his shoulders, and he was more than happy to take that. And and he did beat the record as well. I think he's put Leicester on the map as well. Because his story kind of mirrored Leicester's story. This kind of rags to riches, if you like. Totally unexpected. I think he's been a fantastic servant to the club. He turned down Arsenal as well, didn't he? He had a chance to leave.
Yeah. Who doesn't turn down Arsenal? Let's be honest with you.
Yeah, but I mean, from what I've read, he was offered a hell of a lot of money.
Yes, he was. All joking aside, yeah.
And they were a team who were, regularly competing for Champions League places, regularly winning FA Cups. At the time, we'd won the league, but then, we were struggling. There's no guarantees that we were going to get back to competing for anything. He's been absolutely incredible. And the fact that he's still doing it now as well is, I know he didn't score as many the second half of the season, but he was, fantastic for the first half. Golden Boot winner the season before. You look at Nacho and how well he's done. And Vardy seems to be playing really well with him up front. He's not, Nacho's come up and playing alongside him. He doesn't seem to be jealous for the goals that Nacho's scoring. He's, seems to have adapted his game, and he's helping Nacho out. He's there to celebrate him. I would put him number one on that list for the all-time signing.
Which drops Ingolo out. So, I mean. I to be honest with you, I couldn't put an argument up against that, and that is another one of those moments.
Unbelievable, Jeff.
Just me being a kid, I love that. But yeah, an unbelievable signing, Brad.
Oh, definitely. Matt summed it up perfectly. I mean, I was one, just like Matt, that when I heard the rumours and the bids were going up and there was other clubs, I was thinking, well, let them have it. Let them have him. What's he going to do? Why are we paying such ridiculous money? He's bloody conference. Nobody cares. He's not going to do anything. Yeah, it shows what I well know, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It shows what we all know. It would be a football manager, right? And he came in, cost $1 million. And, considering at one point until Pearson and the board put his arm around him, he looked like he's going to be the most expensive blowout on $1 million since Charlie Sheen probably went to Vegas this one time. But, he came good. He got the goals. He got the confidence. And look what we got. We got a world-class player. I mean, you look at a list, and we talked about a few players throughout the whole show tonight, about players that criminally got starved of England caps or misused by England. That's probably why they didn't get enough caps. He is the pinnacle of somebody who got robbed of an England career, and in the end kind of probably did the right thing by himself. He was one of the it took different topic for a different time, but I could talk about my displeasure around the Shearer and Scholes retiring at 26, 27, 28. However old they were, retiring from the national country when they were getting games for England. This guy knew that England were mucking him about and weren't going to get it, and he'd rather play an extra 4 years on his career than get messed around trying to force himself into an international circuit. And it's paid dividends for him. He made the right decision then, and I'm sure he stands by it, and I'm sure he's glad to be sat on the sofa then being 34, trying to get into a squad in the Euros currently.
We've got, and of course it's better for Leicester, but we've got a great top five there, and a couple of those in there that I think with both of us we'd have, well, both of us, all three of us would have back in the squad now as well. Guys, thanks very much for that. Amazing, like you say, it's football, it's opinions. That's what it's all about. Sorry, Dan. Yes, thanks for reminding us of that. His head was in the sand. He was an ostrich, but then he just grew. Dan, you're awful. You are. But I love you to bits. Thanks very much. Thanks to Dan, Ankit, Mel, and all the others in the chat. Michael, David, it's been great. Matt, thank you very much. I know it was a hard choice, but we got there. And thank you very much for doing that and coming on. And we'll see you soon.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bo. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Bye.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. Cheers. All the best, mate. Take care. I know he's got to go with his kids. Brad, we'll see you later in the later tonight. Thanks for popping on at the last minute. Hope we didn't let your underwear get too wet.
No. Look, it only just started, so I just ran out and just brought it on. It was all on like a what it's called. Not
yeah.
Anyway,
yeah,
I've enjoyed it. I can't remember what they're called now. That's gonna bug me. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. I don't mind being a super sub when it's something like this. It's very subjective. I can tell you for a fact that there's probably a different 5 I would have had in the end, and maybe position wise than what Matt caught with. But that's the joys of doing something like this. We're not always going to agree.
No, we are two footballers, and you'll always get two different opinions. Brad, we'll see you at 10:15. Thanks very much for coming on. A minute before we were about to go. Well, we were late going live, and I was panicking because Matt's internet wasn't working, and I could see him, but I couldn't hear him. But thanks very much for popping on, and we'll see you in an hour and 3/4.
Yes, I'll see you then. Hopefully, France can turn their game around against Switzerland, because I believe...
No, we want Switzerland. We want Switzerland. But that's another story for another night. Brad, I'm going to have to go, but appreciate... Oh, you see, I've even set Amazon off somehow there. Brad, take care, mate. I'll see you at 10:15.
See you then, mate. See ya.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. So there we go. We'll be back straight after
Leicester
this.
Till I Die TV, the home of the FA Cup winners 2021.
Oh, and we have a Premier League trophy too.
So there we go. Ankit, thanks very much. Good show. Good stuff, lads. Big up Melina. Thanks very much there. Great show, lads. And she wants to big up Brad and Dan. Cracking show. Cheers, Dan. Thanks very much, mate. Hope you enjoy your bath. We want to keep a man from his bath. And Brad's gone because he's on his way up to see you, ready to part your water. And I think part was what he said. But anyway, those are our top 5 best ever. Now, as we say, now that's what we call Leicester City's best ever signings. In 5th place, the free signing from Villa, and they probably wish they'd never let him go, Mark Albrighton. In 4th, he came on loan from Chelsea for a bit, had never played a first team game, £800,000. Got in there at number 4, Mr. Muzzy, is it? 3rd, Mr. Leicester. 10 years he's been with us. Came from Leeds. Rumours were he didn't want to come at the start. Yeah, it's not done bad for somebody that didn't want to come, is he? Amazing guy, amazing character. Casper in at 3. Captain Fantastic, Steve Walsh. Yeah, I think he'd have probably stayed with us longer and in some other capacity had it not been for Turnip Head Taylor. Yeah, thanks, Peter Taylor. It's another show we've got coming up about how bad you were. But first, £1 million, non-league player. What the hell were Leicester thinking of? What team in their right mind would spend £1 million on a non-league player? Leicester City. And we've got our money back in spades. Guys, we're going to be back actually in about, 1 3/4 hours, 10:15. We've got the big game coming up. England versus the Germans. Yeah, we've got the Germans coming up tomorrow, of course. Let's hope he doesn't go to penalties. My heart won't stand that. Gareth, I've got heart problems. So what we're going to be doing at number 10 is at 10:15. Brad will be back, and we'll also have Stephen coming on. Click those reminder buttons and we will be talking about Mr. Southgate. Is he all that? Or is he not all that? Is it Southgate in, Southgate out, or is it Southgate shake it all about? If you want to tune in and catch us on any of our shows in podcast form rather than video form, you can do that. All the podcasts on all the main platforms, including Google, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon. And I say, if you are watching on YouTube, please, please, please give us a subscribe. We would love you forever. Guys, thanks very much. It was a great show. Love doing those sort of shows. It is all about opinions. Matt summed it up, and I think he's got a damn good top 5 there. See you later, guys. See you at 10:15. Good night.
Hello, Matt Elliott here. Be sure to watch Leicester Till I Die TV on YouTube and follow all their social media platforms for all the latest updates and news on Leicester City Football Club.
Thanks for watching Leicester Till I Die. This is Chris saying goodbye and see you next time.
Some people are on the pitch, they think it's all over. It is now.
To an end. But the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.